personal brand is a powerful tool to possess. If they knew the power of a personal brand, everyone would want one. And I think everyone should have one.
People look at branding and influencers as that key person of influence.
They've built up hundreds of thousands of followers just by being good looking on Instagram, but it doesn't translate into much.
What do you think a couple of the biggest mistakes you were making in sales?
I should be where I am now 20 years ago. So learning it my way cost me 2 heart attacks, loss of £100 million and 20 years of my life.
I couldn't pay an agent to find me somewhere, so I was walking into every building in Bank, St Paul's and Liverpool Street, and I was literally just ticking off buildings on a map until I found somewhere that was interesting.
And when did you become a relationship coach?
I started training about 7 years ago, get into a place where I had financial prosperity. Working for the local authority wasn't going to bring me that.
In terms of key person of influence, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is what I see almost as the opposite of key person of influence, because people look at branding and influencers as that key person of influence. It's like, oh, this person on Instagram, they've got this massive following, that they're a key person of influence. But to me, 99% of these people, let's say, they've got influence because they've walked off a TV show and people know who they are. But then they don't have any of the other traits, the skill sets, the depth to a business or anything behind it. And for me, they're absolute lost opportunity. And most of these people will never actually do it because I guess they've got the arrogance, for want of a better word, of thinking that they've already got to the end of the game because they've got the celebrity, but they haven't got all the substance behind it. I know what I'm saying. I'm sure you can probably translate.
I think
that
it's the difference between being an influencer and being a key person of influence. So an influencer has got a big profile. They've got 100,000 followers, 1 million followers, tens of millions of followers. But they don't have all the other things, and a lot of the time now we see influencers who are just good looking people and they're just, they've got great bodies and they've got great, looks, and they've built up hundreds of thousands of followers just by, being good looking on Instagram. But it doesn't translate into much. It doesn't translate into having a business or having actual real influence. In many cases, a lot of these people can't actually sell product or sell anything into the marketplace, not of anything, sizable with substance anymore. So it's important that we see the distinction between a key person of influence and an influencer. An influencer can become a key person of influence. They can start with that profile and build it out and strengthen it and actually build something from it. But also you can start with something else, like you start with a business or a product and build out your influence. Tim Cook of Apple has become a key person of influence because he's had to follow in Steve Jobs' footsteps. Ryan Reynolds has started as a Hollywood actor with a huge profile, and he's become a key person of influence because look at his business empire and the way that he mobilizes resources around, the businesses that he's got. He's on track to be a billionaire. So what we're really talking about is not someone who's an influencer. We're not talking about, photographing your breakfast and your gym routine and your abs and all that sort of stuff. We're talking about being a business person who leads with their personal brand, who builds a relationship with people using digital assets, who uses their brand to attract talented people around them, who uses their brand to have joint ventures and partnerships. So we're talking a lot more like a Richard Branson, or we're talking more like a Tim Cook, or we're talking like, realistically, pick any major business these days. CEO has a brand. If they're a fast growth business, that's how it is.
And obviously you talk about the CEO having a brand, and I assume this book was written with the audience being CEOs and entrepreneurs. But do you think it could be and should be applicable to all people within a business? Should everyone try and become a key person of influence in their own little world? And I guess just a bit more context. We talk about look, in my businesses, we often do like LinkedIn training and I always get a lot of pushback from most people, and I'm always saying to them, listen, this is not just for me. This is more for you. One day you're going to want to leave me. One day you're going to want to achieve something different, and the best way for you to be able to do that is to have some kind of brand. You don't need to be a business owner. You can be anyone in a business and have some kind of profile.
Yeah, it's good to capture a little bit of the brand equity. I don't necessarily think everyone needs to have a brand. Like, I'll give you a great example. My co-founder in Score App is a guy called Steve. Steve is a brilliant technology developer, and he's really good at developing technology platforms, recruiting talented tech tech people. He's really great at managing them and getting them to be, super creative, and he's good at fixing any errors that happen. If he's distracted with lots and lots of inquiries and lots of people who want him to be, on a podcast, he's not going to be able to do the thing that he does really, really well, which is behind the scenes. His perfect year is he meets 10 new people and they're all developers. But there's a reason that he and I are in business together, because we're playing a team sport. I don't have to worry about the tech. He doesn't have to worry about the podcasts. So we go really, really well together, but we own a company together. So the value of what he does and the value of what I do ends up in the value of the business. Now, a lot of people, they're not in that situation. So if you're in business with someone who's got a whopping big brand, happy days. You've found that person, but provided you own equity in the company.
One of the things I heard you say the other day on a podcast was, well, I wrote it down. It says a key personal influencer shouldn't be running their business. And I actually recently heard someone else saying that a good CEO doesn't do any work, which I presume the two things are probably heading in the same direction. I mean, if you are a true key person of influence, is that ultimately where you will get to that all the kind of day-to-day tasks are delegated, and your job is there as a promoter, a connector, a figurehead?
Yeah, I think the value proposition of a great CEO is someone who can bring in great talented people, create alignment within the team, promote the business, open doors, create demand for whatever it is that you do. The hardest thing in business is demand. Every business is a relationship between the demand and supply. So if you think about a business that should be very, very profitable but isn't very profitable is an airline, because everyone in an airline thinks about how planes take off and land on time. And it's all about supply side. It's about safety and capital allocation and all of the things that go into the supply of running airplanes. You take a business that is focused on the demand generation. Take Rolex, for example. They're very, very focused on how to make sure Rolex is the number one brand. They have all the top athletes and all the top sports events and all that they work with, and they're very focused on the demand creation. Now, if you take any business, the demand side is way harder than the supply side. For a long time in the industrial age, if you could build it, people would buy it, right? If you could create a pair of scissors, right? You could smelt the steel, somehow pin them together and sharpen them and all that stuff, whatever you do to make scissors. If you could make a pair of scissors, people would buy the pairs of scissors, right? That wasn't the problem. The hard thing was making it. Fast forward to today, you go on Amazon and you type in the word scissors. You're going to see 150 different versions of scissors. You're going to have clothing scissors and craft scissors and kid scissors and colorful scissors and giant scissors, little tiny ones that fit in the purse, right? You're going to get that like thousands and thousands. The hard thing is not making something. The hard thing is selling stuff. So the CEO or the founder or the entrepreneur has to be on the demand side. Now, this is the biggest error that all entrepreneurs are making. All entrepreneurs get into something that they love the idea of doing the work. They go, I want to be a coach. Why? Because I like the idea of coaching people. Okay, that's great. How are you going to win coaching clients? I want to run health retreats. Why? Because I love the idea of running a health retreat. Okay, but how are you going to fill the health retreat? So it's the demand generation side that's hard. That's what stops people. That's what makes businesses fail. It's almost never the case that a business is flooded with demand. Everyone wants to buy from that business and the business goes bankrupt. Right? It's always the case that they're very good at the supply of what they do and they can't sell it.
Hey, Matt Haycox here. Now listen, if you've been enjoying this business advice, you need to check out my podcast, No Bollocks, with Matt Haycox. This podcast, it comes out nearly every day. We get 4 or 5 episodes a week and we talk no bollocks, just the raw, real business information that you need to know. Business information, tactics and strategies that I've learned the hard way over the last 25 years of doing business. I've made the mistakes and I've lost the money, so you don't have to. So check it out, No Bollocks with me, Matt Haycox.
Let's talk content. Or not so much content, but personal brand. I mean, you said a minute ago your podcast started in like 2018. Was that the first foray into the content world for you, or were you already doing anything else prior? And what brought it about?
Well, roughly about the same time. I just recognized that a personal brand is a powerful tool to possess. So I started, intentionally trying to build a personal brand. And I had a lot of these subject matter experts coming in and out of my studios to film their content. And I thought, let me get a couple microphones and pick their brain while they're here.
I mean, what do you see the I guess the stumbling blocks or the blockers to people nowadays who go, I don't need a personal brand, or I don't want to be famous in my space. I mean, do you think it's more just a fear that people probably naturally don't like getting out there in front of the camera, or do you think there's some fundamental misconceptions about the importance of the brand?
Yeah, there's probably a blend of all those things. Ultimately, people have what's called allodoxophobia, the fear of other people's opinion and judgment, ultimately. So I think people fear that they're going to be viewed a certain way, or, if they knew the power of a personal brand, everyone would want one, for sure. And I think everyone should have one. And what's crazy is technically everyone does have one. The question is it known or not? So if you could be famous for being in a movie and you saw the power that gave you, I think, you would do it. And a personal brand is literally, flooding the internet with you. So if you want a personal brand, all you have to do is flood the internet with you, and you're going to get one. It might not be as received as well as others, but there's an ass for every seat. And I think at the end of the day, if you validate yourself, you don't have to worry so much about everyone else validating you.
Technical question on this, and from someone who's doing it better than most. You used the words flood the internet, and a debate I always have with my team back in England, because I live over here, but my guys who do my stuff is still back in the UK. They like to get really, let's say, precious about individual posts, and if we do an extra post today, it's going to fuck with the algorithm, and this is going to get seen less. Whereas if you talk to anyone who's massive in social, they all seem to be of the opinion quantity. I'm not going to say so much quantity over quality, but certainly quantity over perfectionism, and just hammer the life out of it and get it out there. And I was kind of having this debate with one of my girls the other day and saying, look, if the baseline, for example, for a good post is 10,000 impressions, and by doing a second post that pushes your impressions down to say 7,000 impressions, but you've had two posts, you were 14,000 impressions, and surely we'd rather be looking at 14,000 people seeing something than 10,000 people, even if it means that one post hasn't been seen as much. Can you settle my debate with the guys, and I guess give a bit of advice for the people who get really precious about doing that one or two posts a week with the perfect filter and cutting out the abs or the big booty?
Well, I think you already did. What's
Okay.
better, 14,000 or 10,000?
And that's the simple logic. Don't get caught up on, some people haven't seen that one post, or other people haven't seen that. It's just how many people have seen Matt today, or how many people have seen Brad. And even if that was each post only gets 3,000 impressions, but you do 10 of them, and therefore 30,000 is better than 10. And it's just quantity. Don't get so worried about have people seen an individual post or read an individual blog. Just how much is your name on the tip of people's tongues when they're thinking about your industry or your whatever.
Yeah, it's familiarity. How many times have they seen your face? A lot of times, I have to see you multiple times before anything really significant happens. So if you put out one video, what's the likelihood it goes viral?
Not much.
Well, you have one video. You have one chance. If you put out two, you doubled your chances. If you put out three, you've tripled your chances. How many chances do you want to take? So the question is it quality over quantity? No. Quality, it doesn't matter. 9 times out of 10, what goes viral, you didn't even think was going to go viral. At least my experience. The trick is quantity. You want to get your face all over the internet. If I have 1 million people see me on 100 posts versus, 50,000 seeing me on one post, I'd rather do the 100.
And do you advocate for as many platforms as possible? You know, social platforms, have a podcast, do YouTube, or I mean, I guess if somebody's less confident, for example, at being on camera than they are speaking or whatever, then maybe they need to either get more confident or go in one direction, but just be everywhere in every possible way.
100%. You want to just flood the internet with you as many ways as you can, which would include all of the platforms you can and, you know, all of the content you can create.
How much time do you spend creating content? Because I mean, you know, for people who look at you, or not just you, and for people who look at any of the big guys out there on social, it looks like you never have time to run a business, or have a personal life or anything, because it's, you know, you're just seen 24/7. But I mean, how much time do you spend? What does your team look like behind the scenes?
Well, I don't feel like I spend any time making content, because I like to say that I am the content, which means I'm just out doing what I do. So like, whether I had a camera guy here or not, I'd be sitting here doing the same thing. So if this is making content, well, then I spend a lot of time doing it, because I'm making it all day long, 10 hours a day. But it's just me living, talking to who I talk to, going where I go. And I just have the nerve to film it. And so now I've got a massive amount of content that I can use to create actual clips and posts and things of that nature, where a lot of people are like, I can't post 4 times a day, I don't have the content. Well, that's because you're trying to create it rather than to be it. So I would say, get a camera, turn it on, and go do your thing. And if you're doing your thing truly, you'll have tons of content after that. And then I would say, chop it up, make sure it has headlines and subtitles, and then flood the internet with it. So my team is, you know, generally a camera guy who just does taping, and then they upload it to a drive, and I have, you know, a handful of editors that'll go in and, you know, chop it up and make the little graphics and post it.
Do you ever look at stuff, check your own stuff? You know, did you used to in the beginning? You know, like, I worry about that, worry about the other.
Yeah, in the beginning, but again, that's just a mistake. Now I don't. I see it when everybody else sees it. I don't even know what's going to be posted. Sometimes I'll just go check and see what they posted. And, you know, I watch it all, but by the time I see it, so did everybody else.
But then I just went straight into sales, selling photocopiers, fax machines, you name it. Kirby vacuum cleaners, everything I've sold it.
The original sales training ground.
Yeah, I remember.
Could you sell? I mean, were you a natural salesperson at that point?
No. I just worked hard. So what I say now is that if you a shit salesman selling a shit product, if you knock on enough doors, some idiot will buy your product, right? So I just worked hard. When my friends or colleagues were in the pub, I lived in Manchester. I was in Northampton knocking on doors on a Friday afternoon at 6 o'clock.
But did you have anyone teaching? Because I mean, yeah. Look, I'm with you.
No one's ever taught me anything. It's always been self-taught. Then my ex-wife introduced me to Tony Robbins and into personal development. Then I started reading. Okay. Before, it was just hard work and learning, sitting in the car going, where did I go wrong with that one? How can I improve that one? And then I realized some of the shit that I did was actually being taught in America, right? Yeah, reading somebody's how to overcome objections. I just did it naturally.
I mean, if you look back to then, what do you think a couple of the biggest mistakes you were making in sales were that you had no one to coach you out of?
I should be where I am now 20 years ago. So learning it my way cost me 2 heart attacks, loss of £100 million, and 20 years of my life. Yeah, but then would I be so humble and live in gratitude if I had it too easy? You never know. But I'm always a seeker, and they said, you know, you're this and that. So I'm in work in progress. I'm still learning more than ever before, right? And also now we're a bit spoiled because before, if I want to learn anything, I had to either know someone who was rich and successful or go to the library. There was that one book somebody told me about. Now we can sit on the toilet, on the bus. All the information we need is in the tip of our hands, fingers. So yeah, I can't wait to consume more information, learn more. But those days it was tough.
But those days, were you not? I guess my thought would be that as someone who had the life of hard knocks, of being bullied, of fighting, of skipping school, etc., that you were probably averse to wanting to learn more. I don't know what the word is. Not like an arrogance, but I'm stubborn. I'm going to do this on my own. Was the Tony Robbins a big eye opener to you?
Do you know what it was? It was the case of from age. The moment I found out my dad had passed, I was told it's your responsibility to take care of the family. It was that sense of responsibility that kept me going. I didn't think about the future. I thought I'd live forever. But one thing I did though, I started counting. Like, so by year 1990, I'll be so many days old. By year 2000, I'll be so many days old. If I live to be 76, I only have so many days left. So I was always very aware of time. So I didn't waste it. Okay, and I was always productive. I had to do something because I don't want to waste it. Because I've watched young people die in front of me, and they had limited times, limited lives. When I see people, it breaks my heart, and I'm thinking, well, you guys are walking around like you're going to live forever, right? And you just don't know that you're going to have regrets when you're old, that you just wasted your time. So it was just in me, and it was just like, I have to provide. It wasn't about personal growth. I just had to earn money. And then I realized that it was my mom would tell me I was no good, I was useless, this, all the abuse. So I think inside of me was like, fuck you, Mom, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you that I am not the useless person you say I am. Yes, I'm not going to. So I started being driven as a reaction of proving my mom wrong. Because whatever you say, even last week, she's alive, so hopefully she's not going to watch this. Even last week, I launched my book. It sold out in a day. My book sold out in a day. And I said, hey, Mom, I was talking to her a couple of days ago, and she was going about how wonderful everybody else is. And I thought, you know what, I'll just throw something in the pot. And I said, Mom, by the way, my book came out, and it sold out in a day. So who would buy your book? Not wow, amazing. And what's it about? Because immediately she's thinking, am I in there? You with me? And I was like, here we go. Never in my life I've ever had somebody who can literally get under my skin, say, wow, I'm proud of you. You're amazing.
Cool. So that was the business model. You needed to go and raise investment. You'd obviously never done anything like this before.
No.
How did you think about it?
I was in the city of London. It's easy, to be honest. I know that sounds maybe a bit flippant, but people were always looking for somewhere to put their cash.
But did you have a business plan? Or
Okay. We'd written a plan, which obviously you're always building on that. It always changes and tweaks and it improves. But we had a good plan to start with. Actually, a friend helped with that because
I was going to say, so you got the plan, but how did you do it? Obviously, it doesn't sound like your background or your partner's background. You got some help, or you jumped on Google?
No, a friend of mine. We sat down with, who sort of helped us map it out and explained it to us. He was in finance, so he gave me some really good advice. Actually, it was super valuable, and his partner as well gave me some great advice. And I think I was so lucky in the job that I was doing that I was surrounded by so many successful people. Same as when I started skating, you learn so much, and if they're doing it, why can't you do it? I didn't think. I just felt like I belonged. I felt like I could do that. And if you don't try, you'll never get anywhere, right? So the money was easy.
Where were your customers going to come from? Were you just going to lift them from your existing client base?
Well, you meet lots of people. I was in the city for quite a long time, and he'd been working in the city for longer than me. And the city's 1 mile. When you're in one office, everybody in there knows you. And obviously I have some profile because of my sport. And I do the commentary for BBC, for the Olympics and stuff as well. So I was known enough, and it happens quickly. Word of mouth is the best tool. If you do a good job with your clients, they will tell people. You get somebody in shape and feeling good and sleeping better and more energy and everything else, they're going to tell people about that. And then, a personal recommendation is always the best. Everybody that comes to Raw brings somebody else, everybody. So we don't do any marketing. everything is just, everything's just word of mouth.
And that's been the same for each of the ones you've
Yeah.
opened, and even here in Dubai.
Yeah. So the first one was real speakeasy vibes. There was no shop front. I didn't have any money. So, we were painting the walls ourselves.
And how much did you raise for the first one?
That was 300,000.
Yeah.
It cost, and bearing in mind it's over £1 million to do.
I was going to say that's the price of London, 300 grand. You can't even get a shop front.
I can't believe we did that. I mean, we did it, super budget. There was no real designer. We just sort of did it in white.
Was all that money for equipment? Was it really?
Yeah, we put a lot of money on equipment, and build. We did have to build it. It was a basement, and to find that, because we were skint when we got axed from our first company. And we were in this panic. We couldn't even work. We didn't even get paid our last month's salary. So, we were in trouble. And I couldn't pay an agent to find me somewhere. So I was walking into every building in Bank, St. Paul's and Liverpool Street.
And so when you say axed from your first company, are you talking about the original one you set up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which obviously I won't name.
That wasn't called Raw back then?
No, that wasn't called Raw. That was called something else.
Okay.
Which, I did come up with that name as well. But no, so that was a different company. So, to find a property, even just finding space, I was walking into buildings and saying, what's in your basement? Is it open plan? What's the ceiling height? Please, can I have the landlord's details? Of course you can't. No. Can you give him mine? Please don't put it in the bin. I'm coming back tomorrow. And I was literally just ticking off buildings on a map until I found somewhere that was interesting.
And when did you become a relationship coach?
I started training about 7 years ago.
Okay, so around a year or so after this has ended.
Yeah. And I'd already studied in counselling, so I've worked in mentorship and doing counselling within organisations before. So it's something that I'd already had a lot of experience with, but I knew it was the way to go if I wanted to actually get into a place where I had financial prosperity. Working for the local authority, which I did at the time for years, wasn't going to bring me that. And I certainly wasn't going to sit around and wait for a man to rescue me anymore, because I kept doing that. And it was completely the opposite effect that I got. So I thought, I've got to do this for myself. And that sent me on the path. And they say, coach people with what your younger self would have needed. So
let's talk about the coaching business. Let's talk about some of the, I guess, the common problems or the potential solutions. I mean, when you see clients, do you have a typical client? I mean, obviously, a typical client is someone who's from a toxic or abusive relationship, but do they tend to be, a particular age range or a particular geographic area, socioeconomic background? Are there core traits that, that tend to lead to an abused, and I presume we're talking women here, not men.
Yeah. I mean, I do work with men, but and I think it's really sad that actually there aren't, because I used to run domestic abuse programs for the local authority. There weren't programs for men, and men do experience it, but I tend to draw and attract towards me more women. Yep. And I run women's retreats, and I have a women's Facebook group that's just for women. I think probably a lot to do with, I focused on women because firstly, I understand them better, but secondly, I wanted to protect myself in terms of boundaries. In the past, one of the relationships, I had worked in a treatment centre, and that person had been a client, and a few months after they'd left and I'd left the job, I ended up getting together with them. So for me, obviously, boundaries were blurred. So I think I wanted to protect myself from that as much as possible until I'd grown enough myself and healed enough myself that I wasn't attracted to broken men anymore. So I think it's partly that. But yeah, I'd say mostly women from 30s to 50s. That's my normal demographic. I have worked with some younger girls. That's more focused on the self-esteem stuff. But definitely in terms of unhealthy relationships, between 30 and 50, women start really waking up to the patterns and what they've allowed in their lives, and they start to find their voice a little bit, or really want to find it. So yeah.
Have you got any particularly memorable and inspirational stories of certain clients or people that you've helped?
I've seen some of the most incredible transformations. One I worked with recently, when she came to me, she was at the tail end of another broken marriage, and
Another one of hers.
hers had broken, yeah, and she was absolutely broken and questioned every single thing that she said, apologized for every single thing that she said, couldn't navigate her emotions, was just an absolute shell. And after working with her for 12 weeks, I still work with her now. Like, the transformation in her.
As quick as that in 12 weeks?
Yeah. Not everyone is like that, because someone has to be really invested. I'm not a miracle worker, right?
Was she still with the guy at this point, or she'd left him
they,
then?
They were living together, but had separated. So she was going through that emotional process. I've never seen someone glow so flipping much, how she carries herself, how she's walking, how she talks. But she did the work as well. Yeah, so I'm not professing to be some miracle worker. I'd love to be. I'd love to have a cure that sorted someone within a few weeks. Like, I would love that. If I could give that to everyone, I would. But that's not the reality. A lot of it comes from us. We have to do the work. Just as, like, I can have a coach that coaches me in the gym, but if I only show up on the days that he's coaching me and the rest of the week I'm not doing anything, I'm not going to get the progress. I'm not going to see the change. So it's exactly the same when we're working with our mind, our emotions, and our mental well-being.
Hey, Matt here. Just interrupting myself quickly to say thank you for listening to No Bollocks. But did you also know I've got another podcast, Stripping Off with Matt Haycox? Very different. No Bollocks is the quick daily business tactics that you need. But Stripping Off, we go deep, deep, deep with a CEO, with a celebrity, with an athlete, with an international inspiring character. We find out what makes them tick, we find out how they got to where they got to, and we find out how you can learn and benefit from them too. So jump on over to Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, wherever you listen to your content, and I'll see you on a future episode.